Okay, and we're back. So we've got some more functions. Now we saw the length function before, so length of yvec. That's great. The length is 10. That's good. We also got simple functions like sum. And no surprises at all what that's going to do. 58. Okay. If we start typing a function, it's giving us all these hints about what it could be. And it's trying to autocomplete for us. But we also get these like documentation for what it does. So sum, it's telling us what are the arguments to that function. So at the moment it's just got a ... That means whatever we want to put in there. But they got this na.rm equals false. Now, first of all, let's just run that. Let's just run sum. Okay, 58, great. Let's get yvec now, and let's assign to the first, let's say the first number, let's put the value na. Okay, so now we've got an na value inside yvec. So when we run sum, it's going to say na. It's going to say, nah, I'm not doing it for you because they're not all numbers inside this vector. So this happens with data, eventually that you do get na values. So now we need to do that na.rm, and if we just type in na, it's giving us a hint that there's an argument waiting for us, which is na.rm, and we're going to say true. So yeah, we've gone a bit less because we've lost a number. Okay, so that is the sum function. If I just go back, let's say yvec. Let's recreate it. So I just removed that na value by recreating it. I could do another thing. Let's try this. Let's just be crazy. Okay. So I've gone ahead and added that na value back into yvec. There's a little test is.na yvec. So what is that going to do? It's going through each element of the vector and saying, are you an A? Are you an A? Are you an A? Okay. So it says true for the first one and the rest are not an A. Okay. So we might want to filter yvec. So instead of filtering by like the indice of the item, which is what we did before with the 1, we can filter by this boolean value, which instead of going by the index, it's going to go, do we want this one? Do we want this one? Do we want this one? And by true or false, it's going to pick that number. So if we feed it this vector, what are we going to get? So we're going to get the first one and none of the other ones. So let's run it. So that's the first value. But then if we do not na, so that's where this is always tricky to know, but where you put this exclamation mark reverses the answer. So I'll just show you here, not na. And now it's flipped it, hasn't it? So now when we run this, we get all the other values. And my only point is na removed vec. So now we can do the mean of na removed vec, and we've got the average value. But if we just did yvec, whoops, it's going to give us an error because there is that first element still as an na. So we just have to do that na remove equals true. Cool, same value as before. So that's pretty good. I'm just going to cover as well. So we've done the 1 to 5 gives us a whole bunch of numbers. We can also do a function called seq, which is a sequence. So from 1 to 5 and give me ones. We can just change it to 10, give me ones. That's so steps of 1. We could also do something like this, length out equals 20. So go from 1 to 10, but give me 20 values out of it. So there we are. There's 20 different values, all retrieved. So a very useful function. Note as well that it's doing that whole only labeling the index of the number at the start of the line. So that's not really helpful, but yeah, we can even test it. So we can just go length of that output is 20 as we expected. Okay. So that's sequence, very useful for generating a specific sequence of numbers. There's also one for dates as well, but I'll cover that later on. Another key thing is if we do this one here, let's call that y. Let's save that. Ooh, it's not happy with that. There we go. So now it's happy. Cool. So we can also sample. So from this vector of 20 numbers, let's sample 2 numbers. Okay. So 8 and 3, and there's somewhere in there. So there's 8.5 and there's 3.36. So it's picked 2 at random. Once again, picked them at random. And what's happening here is it's not going to pick the same number twice as well, because it's not replacing. So we got this replace. By default, that is true, but we can change it to false. Oh no, sorry, by default, it's not replacing, so it's false. But we can change it to true. So if we run this enough times, there's a chance we'll get the same number coming out twice. Okay, so that's sample. That's quite useful. Another function is rUniform and rNorm. So if you know much about statistics, uniform is just like a straight block of a distribution, and normal is a curved distribution. So it's going to ask us for, what does it want? So first of all, it wants how many numbers you want out, and from that distribution, what was the mean, what was the standard deviation. So the default is a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. So if we just put in 5, it's going to give us 5 numbers from that 0, 1 distribution. Okay, so that's another thing as well, is we can go for the arguments of a function. So we can go n equals, it's going to be the same thing. Well, the result is different, but this is the same thing, because with certain functions, it expects arguments to come in a set order. So if you give what it is expecting, it's going to take those arguments as though they were labeled. Okay, so here is n. The second argument was mean, and the third argument was standard deviation. So here we go. Let's say a mean of 500 and a standard deviation of 1. We should get a whole bunch of numbers around 500, as we have. Okay, but we could also, if we wanted to do them out of order, we could say SD equals 500 and mean equals 1. So we're going to get a whole bunch of numbers either side by a big margin of 1. There we go. Okay, so that's rNorm. rUniform. So we got 0 and min and max. Okay, so it's getting the edges of the rectangle for taking the distribution out. So it operates very much the same way. So 5, let's say distribution between 1 and 10. There we are, a whole bunch of random numbers between 1 and 10. Okay, so there you go. That is a whole bunch of mathematical things relating to numbers. And I think next video we move on to strings. Okay, thanks.